Let's try one of my history structures. Consider this, all right? Let's consider a view that I can formulate verbally for the kind of progress of man, civilization. Let's look at it for tonight, at least for this few minutes, like this. Step one, man settles down and grows crops, goods. Step two, man begins to move the goods from here to there for profit, which is, of course, how you make profit normally. You take whatever you got and you move it from there to somewhere where it's worth more, where the price and the value are at odds in your favor. So, after he settled down and raised the crops, fed himself, fed his family, all right? Then the next stage was, after he had found himself having surplus goods, he began to ship them, began to move them to other places where they were worth more. Step three, I'll jump right up until today. We'll call this step three, that man is now moving information from place to place for profit. Now, any good matrix, any good paradigm, which I suggest the one I just put together is good, it's at least good. Any good paradigm should suggest the next step. That is, you should just be able to see a pattern, whether you agree with the pattern or not, to see what the example had in mind. So now, I ask you for step four, what's next? Well, think about it a second. You know, it should give some suggestion. Oh, all right. This is not the answer, but just so that we're not standing here the rest of the night and people feel like that they may have egg or yolks running down their chin. How about this? This is not the answer, but as I said, there's no sense me making everyone feel like you're on the spot and us, or me just stand here for another 40 or 50 minutes with tape running. So since this is not the answer, I'll feel free going ahead and giving it. How about this? What if there was a way to move information inside of you for profit, inside of an individual? Now they're doing it now. The cutting edge of civilization, the yellow circuits, the intellectual aspects of man on this planet right now, they continue to come out with figures showing that even now there is a majority of people involved in the city in the service industries rather than the production of goods, and specifically more and more the moving of information, not just services of waiting on people in restaurants and manning the complaint counter at Macy's and Bloomingdale's, but more and more the service industries, the service sectors being specifically that of dealing in info. That is the growth industry. The place to make profits now is the movement of information, as opposed to mining and manufacturing. If you had any doubt, those of you who are interested in such matters, you simply start looking at where the progenies of the robber barons of here and in Europe, those, at one time, just as I was giving that paradigm of one view of how life progressed, the money was always in. Thousands and thousands of years, just right up until some of you people's lifetime. The real power equated with wealth in this case, so I'm talking about profit, and I'll start off with that sort of apparent material springboard, that the profit was always in the land, that everybody on the land that had money. That was where money derived from. That is the source of all profit, was to own the land, because then you had people having to pay you to live. Not live well, not eat good, not sleep good, but they had to pay you for standing there. Sir, are you going to stand there long? And the little sir, that was 6,000 years ago, 100 years ago, and the person says, well, I thought I might. The man had his attorney, since he wouldn't fool with it, show a deed and say, well, you're standing on my client's property. If you plan to stand there long, the rent is $1 an hour, 2 shekels a month. Then, as technology started, the land also produced all wealth. Is all manufacturing. I found this out before, but it seems to come as a shock to people. It just shows you how much you ordinarily think. That everything that's produced, well, it's not produced. It doesn't come out of a factory in Pittsburgh. It's not this building that they built, lay down a nice slab floor, put up walls, a ceiling, maybe a few windows, and then out of this building, in some way, began to flow engines, transmissions, ball bearings. And you say, where'd they come from? You say, well, the Acme Ball Bearing Company. No, where'd it really come from? Well, it came from their factory. Yeah, but where'd it come from? Well, the people made it. It came out of the land. It has always been that all wealth, profit, came from the land. But not anymore. People are still making profit, but less and less, less and less. Pittsburgh's almost closed up. Cleveland, thank God. Gary, well, all of you know this, or you should read, that all the ways in which profit was made from the land is disappearing almost as fast as those who used to own it can unload the factories and close them down, have new laws written so they can get tax write-offs. Now, it is dealing with that which is not produced in the land for the first time, that is not organically laying in the ground. That is, now people are making profit. As I said, if you wanted to check into it, it's a little late now, but the kind of people who used to own land, and they still own plenty of land, but they got out of that, and they started moving over to that which does not come out of the land. Information. People are paying for it, and people are making a profit. I ask you the question, where might the next step be, since I'm really pushing the future, you might say? Because as it is, the service industry, is the moving of information from here to there, is really in its nascent stages. It's just beginning. It's like a real horny and blossoming out young female teenager, I guess. It's just getting ripe. People are just making fortunes. As I said, you people grew up doing that. Whiz kids and computers that made millions in 12 months' time. So it's still going on. We're still going through this eternal shifting, moving of energy, because now you have, in the western parts of the world that were manufacturing, that were goods-based, you now have unemployment going up in those industries, in those areas, those sectors, and you have apparently the city trying to catch up in education. They're trying to, that they still have aspects of their schools, turning out people that are trained to do work that doesn't exist anymore. So you have this continuing evolution out there, apparently. So what I'm saying is, it is really too early to see how big it will be. But you can see that life has already made those that are the great profit mongers of the world already see that moving information is it. But think about it a second. What is sort of interesting, before I get to the heart of it, and you people getting this on tape for the first time, I'm not really talking about what it sounds like. Just sometimes it sounds like I'm talking about what I'm talking about. But I'm not. Unless you find it interesting, then I am. Because even when I'm not, you can't help it, I still am. Here's what I thought you might find interesting, not because of out there, because this is about the last step. I'm going to apparently be talking emblematically about the out there, and so this is a good segue. But goods, the crops, when man was planting crops and he had settled down in one place, established a little city, a little village, and he grew the crops, he could use the crops. But to make a profit, he had to start moving from one place to another, you understand? Because right next door to him was his brother-in-law growing crops. The land is contiguous. They're probably growing the same crop, and so if he's got extra corn, he can't make a profit. His brother-in-law is not going to buy corn from him. His brother-in-law is up to his armpits in corn, assuming they've gotten to the point that they're feeding themselves and their immediate family. To sell corn, you've got to move it somewhere. You got to move it somewhere that they are not growing corn. You got to move it somewhere that they have the opportunity to have corn or taste it for the first time and say, yes, we like that, and we have these shiny things that we pull out of the ground. We can't eat them. And the corn growers think, well, we'll trade you X amount of corn for those shiny things. But you have got to move it from where it is to turn a profit. That's simply an economic law. It's more than that, but I guess they would call it an economic law. It's the conservation and then the moving of energy. But now with information has got to be moved, or else what are you going to do with it, ordinary person? They can't eat it. Those in the information business, the IBM, if we was trying to look at now right quick as a family structure, they do not grow information. There is not a certain amount of information that all the people involved there with that one community, that one area, can consume. It is all surplus. So it's not a question. They can't go through the first stage of settling down and producing services, settling down and growing information. So you can't go from step 2, and the one I drew out, into a step 4. You can't say that man settled and grew crops, then moved crops for profit. You can not then pick up a third step that would be equal to the first one to say, all right, men settled and grew or produced information, services. You can say that, but then the next step doesn't follow. It doesn't have a 2-step there, because they do not consume the information. The only reason to have the information is to make a profit. That's the only reason. What else are you going to do with it? So it does not perfectly equate. Now, back to my question to you. What might be the next step? And what I'm suggesting to you, the possibility of moving information within you, the individual, for a profit. Move information from one place where it is native to somewhere that is not native. Move it from one place to where it is common to another place where it would be dear, that they would go, geez, we have never seen information like this. We've heard about it, we heard rumors, but we've actually never laid eyes on it, we've never tasted it. Does that sound familiar to anyone? There's another something I would try to draw your attention to connected to this. Life continues to extend itself not only through the evolution of man, which is the only thing of any particular interest to us. It's not only through the extension and the evolution of man, the individual organism, the individual physical being. There's a way in which that you can see that life is extending itself, energizing itself through what would appear to be man's own extensions, his own inventions, what would appear to be his technologies, his cultures, and his institutions. The individual man himself has been benefiting, continues to benefit. None of this is a period yet for any of you who think I'm saying what I'm not saying. The individuals, men, have benefited from what seems to be the evolution out there of their own inventions, their technologies, their cultures, their science, their learning, all of their institutions. And it would seem, from a certain view, that these kinds of apparent inventions out there, outside the physical organism of the individual, can produce as fast or even faster the evolution of all men. Still not a period. It is more evidence, if any of you needed it, if you can see it, that out there is in here, and that in here is also the out there. Well, Don't bother to run the tape back, I'll start all over. Thus far, I sense a batting average of 0. Insofar as the individual physical evolution of man, let's just assume, let's take what they say in the city, that man has physically evolved. And there's no reason to deny that. There's no reason to argue with it. There's evidence of it in your lifetime. You can talk to your mother. You can talk to your grandmother. I've told you. Man has physically evolved. All right? There is now, and it's fairly recent, insofar as it having a great part to play, there is now the appearance, if you can see it and hear what I'm about to say, that things that man has apparently invented. All right? The things that man, I'm using city terminology now, stuff that did not grow out of the ground, right? Man's cultures, the technology, air conditioners, internal combustion engines did not spring out of the ground. They were not laying around waited to simply be discovered. Apparently, humans, through this, invented it, invented their culture, invented morality, invented logic, that evidently, this is the kind of thing they say in the city all the time, that man has created his own world. And usually in the city, they refer to it almost entirely in a pejorative sense, that he is continually doing damage to the natural world, such as the internal combustion engine is going to burn up the planet and the greenhouse effect and all of that, and all the carbon floating around. So using their terminology, man has created much on this planet that would not be here were it not for man. That he in some way has invented, has created things that nature did not create. Can you see? I'm still just using that description. That is not the more complex view of it by any means, of course, but just using that limited city view. What I wanted you to see, that I have never mentioned, was even from that view, and then a little bit more, the very things that man seems to have invented, that he has created that nature did not, has served the process of evolution, because man has not changed that much. I say that man has changed. I say that man has changed physically, and I'm not the only person that knows that, but I even know it beyond history. But you have not changed that much, not just you individually, but humanity has not changed that much in the last generation, in the last 2 generations. But humanity has changed more in the last generation, the last 2 generations, than it has changed in 6,000 years. Now everybody knows that, but nobody ever sees anything curious about it. Well, they say, well, it's due to the breakthroughs in science, technology, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But do you see that there's a kind of super efficiency at work here, that instead of, I'll go back to city terms now, I'm trying to make it fairly stable and straightforward for you to spring off on your own. Nature, desiring evolution, goes about it in a gradual fashion. That's what all of anthropology, biology points out, that the evolution of man and other creatures, but the evolution of everything alive, is very gradual, very glacial. But look, there is a kind of evolution going on that is not so slow and methodical. There are great leaps and changes in the life of man, but it is not in the physical evolution. Things have not changed physically. And man's abilities, the way he looks, the way he functions, that much from Newton to an Einstein's generation, from an Einstein's generation to your generation. And yet the life of humanity is almost unrecognizable from some views from Newton to Einstein. In many ways, taking Einstein out to the later years of his life, it's someone living at the turn of this century. Look how unthinkable, how amazing some of what's going on now would be to someone who died in 1899. There is an evolution that has gone on that in a sense bypassed the physical evolution of individuals and of humanity, that life has made use in a way apparently of going through man and took a shortcut and made man come up with these kinds of things I was lumping under inventions, things apparently that nature did not produce. Schools, hospitals, the fields of medicine is what I mean by institutions, the field of law, the civilizing effect of society, of morality, of religions. This did not grow out organically of the ground. It was not laying around on the planet, and life has used men as the medium to produce this, but it simultaneously has evolved man faster than he would have been going if we were talking solely on the physical basis. Because physically, you're not that much different from Newton. You probably bathe more often. And your wigs probably do not cost as much anymore. But physically, insofar, forgetting the lifespan for a second, what I mean by physically, the abilities of the brain to operate, the ability of Newton, and I'm using him for a whole generation there, the people at that time to control their passions in a fairly reasonable, civilized manner, them being able to walk about, stand upright, deport themselves in public in a reasonable fashion. In a sense, you have not, humanity has not changed that much physically. The evolution, men have not grown wings since Newton's time, but they have invented airplanes and they can fly. Men have not developed gills, whereas if Newton jumped in the water and he couldn't swim, he would drown. That's still true of men, except for this. Men have now invented an unnatural thing known as a submarine. Scuba gear. And so they can do things that Newton's generation could not do, but it is not based upon mere physical evolution. It's based upon a kind of off path that ran off to the side, and apparently man himself is better off because of what he invented. Of course, from a more complex view now, you and I know, or at least I know, and you know that I know, and you know that I've told you, that we're all working on the plantation. The plans all come from somewhere else. And anybody that knows anything knows that, or conversely, anyone who doesn't know that does not know beans or even sauerkraut. So, my question takes on new light if you followed any of this, of what next, is why would life go at it in this manner? Why would not life? Obviously, life needed men to fly. Now, let's just look at it simply. That because of the need to transfer energies over greater periods, faster periods of time and over greater physical areas, known now in the city just as commercial enterprise, the marketplace, that it needed men to be able to go faster. Why did not life simply put on wings? Think about it a second. This is not silly. Why did it not? Why did life make men, thousands of men, untold thousands, involved piecemeal to develop thinking machines, resulting finally, after hundreds of years, spotty, popping up here and there, mathematicians trying it, people theorizing about it, comes out now as the backbone of the information business, the computer. If man could invent that, why didn't life go ahead, nature as they'd call it in the city, why didn't nature go ahead and go, well, we need this kind of information storage and ability to move it about, and it just start making men have the ability to do that? Why did life go at it on the basis that it had to work for hundreds of years, and still those supercomputers take up large areas, at least a larger area than your head, and you've got to have thousands of people working around some facility? Why did life not directly do it with man? Why? Since you don't know why, since that's not the point, of course, back to my suggestion to you. What if it was possible for an individual, not humanity, but what if it was possible to move for profit information from one place to another inside of you? For a profit, for an unexpected profit. Take information that is native to one area, which is doing no good. Anybody who's real sharp, I could say when I was pointing out 10 minutes ago that information is not like crops and it does the growers no good, it does them good once. I'm not saying how much good, but it's like eating something once, but after you eat a piece of information once, that's it. Hence my encouragement, my foolish encouragement all of these years to tell you never think the same thing twice, because it doesn't do you any good. So once the person has thought it, once the person has this one piece of information, once the area in the person has the one piece of information, once an area out there has the information, once they see it once, they don't need it. It's worth nothing anymore to them. The only way that they can turn a profit then is you have got to move it from where it is native and common to where it is dear and precious. Someone will pay you for the information. No one there will pay you. No one in this IBM or the XYZ corporation that is handling this kind of information, nobody working there would give you a penny for the information because they've got access to it. They own the information. Even if they're employees, they got the information. You cannot sell it to them. You've got to sell it to somebody outside that institution, that business, that locale. That's the only person that will pay for it. That's the only way to make a profit. You have got to move the information physically. How about internally? In you. How about thinking the same things over and over and over? How about the inability for the nervous system to go past where it is now in any person's lifetime, that you've got to wait for nature to do it? And sad to say, nature, I don't know, fucked up again, has got arranged to where you die before it ever gets around to making any widespread changes. And I'm sure if some of us could ever point out to nature, I'm just sure, knowing as good-natured as nature is, that she'd probably go, oh, I never thought of that. I mean, I just knowing her like I do, but right now that's the game, so that's the rules. You got to go by it. That you're going to die before you evolve. If you're part of the queue. All right, I'm suggesting, of course, that a part of what this is about is being able to move information internally for a profit. That is a piece of what I've always meant by neuralizing. That's one reflection of it, or by me talking about a new kind of intelligence, being able to think without believing, or in the past when I referred to it as being able to think about something, to remember something without thinking about it. And then I move from that to think about it without believing it. It is a way in which you're moving information physically in the brain from one place to another where it can turn a surprising, an unexpected profit. What do you think all so-called mystical states are about? Even with people who, in a sense, don't deserve it. That is, who, well, I mean in the real sense of it just happens in life and they can't repeat it. It was not a part, it does not become a part of their makeup. But the many instances, all the way from the religions to people having these great flashes that they believe are from the gods, all of that. What do you think it is? I'll tell you what it is from one view that I'm describing tonight. It is information got moved from one place in their neural makeup, that it went from one spot to another and it turned a surprising and unexpected profit. That's what it was. It was not voices of the gods, but it went to one spot from a previous spot, and the new spot went, God Almighty, they had never tasted corn before. Or conversely, those shiny things, that's the most beautiful stuff I've ever seen in the world. And of course, it's from one step from there to Mr. Tiffany decided, hey, why don't we go in business with this stuff? Or the De Beers. It is only surprising, it is only useful once it gets moved from its native location. That is true with corn, that is with goods, iron, steel, gold, diamonds. It was true then, now it is true with information. But it has always been true with information, even before there was a recognizable information industry. That is what the God's voices to the ancients were. That was what the mystical experiences continue to be with people. Is information being moved from one place to another, and it turns an unexpected profit. Now, to people to whom it just seems to happen, the unexpected profit ends up in quotation marks, and the profit is soon squandered. They end up with kind of like the first times that most of you ever smoked pot. Is, wow, you know, stuff booze, to hell with church, I have found it. No wonder they, at least 30 years ago, when people would say, no wonder they'll lock you up for 20 years for this. But after the first time, the next time you did it, you thought, boy, somebody gave me a ringer. This is not the good stuff. Where's the other stuff? And you keep trying, and it's never, you never get back to first. Never, never, never. And it's not pot's fault. Pot tries its best. Of course, it happens to many people with alcohol, but it is so short-lived that most people don't even remember that. And most people, that if they're wired up to going to be drinking some in their life, the first time they ever get just a couple of sips in them, they go, my God. You know, Superman's in that little bottle, that little can. Superman, plastic surgery, an increase in my IQ, but then you can't ever get it again. Information was moved internally. In your own synapses, it jumped from one place to another, and they had never tasted corn. They had never seen diamonds. This piece of information had never reached them before, but the people squander it. The few, this is of no importance, of course, but those to whom it just seems to happen, and it does happen in life, they simply squander it. They're just amazed, and the rest of their life they keep trying to, varying degrees, to reproduce it. They keep, every time they run across some more pot, they try it again. Or they plan to try it. They're just sure that they can reproduce the initial impact, and they cannot. You've got to know what it's about to have any idea of how to do it yourself, to move information about for a profit. If you're not, now that I'm down to trying to carry some of you internally, if you're not moving it about internally, then whatever you know is wasted. Now, some of you realize what I was saying before. Information, if you're looking at a company in the information business, service, the information they have is no good to them. And it doesn't have to be just a corporation with a group of employees. How about an attorney? He sells information, a service. There he sits in his office, 12 years in school, fought his way through Harvard. Out of school is already, goes in private practice, let's say. Sole practice, sits there by himself, and he's already the first day $100,000 in debt. Part of the loans, the office. There he sits. He's got one thing to sell, information, his ability to use what he knows. There he sits. Is his knowledge of the law worth anything to him? Nothing. Nothing. No, unless, of course, he gets in trouble. So don't give me that. A physician. There he sits. 14 years I am now a neurosurgeon, board certified, and there he sits. Well, what good is that to him unless, you know, he has his own stroke, decides to operate on himself? The knowledge, the information is of no value. It was of value one time. It got him his knowledge of contracts. The attorney was good for him one time, when they had the quarter of contracts, and he had to pass it to every guy at school. So it was good to him once. After that, you can't sit around and talk to somebody in any business, a carpenter, a drywall man, anybody, and we'll talk to them about their business. What do you know? All of you should hear what I'm saying. The knowledge is useless to you. You can't make any money off of it, but plus it is personally useless. Who wants to talk about it? You want to think about what you know, you think, well, shit, I already know that. To turn a profit, you've got to move it. The same way as growing corn. To ever make a profit, you've got to move it to where they're not growing corn. You've got to get it moved to some place that they will pay for it. The same way with information. All right? Individually, groups of people, businesses, institutions, enterprises. individually. Now, back to that. I just wanted you to make sure that you had some basis of following what I'm saying. Internally, you have information stored in the nervous system. Well, let's take it to the brain where it belongs. You've got all this knowledge stored from head to toe, of course. But up here is what we're talking about, what it passes for intelligence. You've got information stored there, but the place it's stored is useless. It's potentially valuable. The attorney's sitting there. Right now he's in debt. He doesn't know he can pay his first month's rent. But knowing the field of the law from what I read, the man has the potential to make mucho bucks shortly. A neurosurgeon is probably not going to end up on welfare, even though he may open up, if he was in single practice, the first day he may open up $200,000 in debt. I'm not going to worry about him ending up on the dole lines. So that's not it. But the information that you've got stored in your brain at any particular place has potential value. But is it executed? As you sit there, as you live out your life in the way in which life would carry you in the city, is what you know profitable? And not to give you the blues on this festive time of year, of course, the answer is 17. No, the answer is no, it's not. Well, I was trying not to give you the blues, and I knew if I said no, it's not, then some of you would go, ah. But many people seem to be somewhat enthused when they realize that the answer may be 17. I don't know what it is about the number, but it seems to please many people. Would anyone suspect that I could say that that is a fair description of what this is about? It's being able to move energy about. Not just knowing new information, as I've tried to point out, but it's being able to see what everybody else sees in a different way. To think about the things everybody else thinks about, you might say, but in a different way. And then you could ask, well, how do you do it? I'm trying to tell you another approach to it. Is you have got to move the information from one place to another, or it is not profitable. Think about it a second. Of course, you're going to sit there and think right where you're growing. You're going to sit there and try and sell corn where you're growing corn. I know you. Yeah, I know you. But if what you knew had any value, if it was profitable, why hadn't it been profitable? This is a simple question for complex people. And complex people can see the simple answer that thus far it has been of no profit. And what you say makes a lot of sense, as insane as it is, as surprising as it is. Turn the tape over. Who did the background?
Dorothy.
Oh. You think that's a dove or a variation of the Rolling Stones Lips logo? That's the one that hit me when I first came in. Or maybe it's a dove with the glitter twin lips. Oh. Well, all right. Let me try a couple other things from the last few days. Being, as it were again, me personally buoyed and enthused with my great success with you people thus far tonight. I was talking about the future and giving you a new definition of the future. And I think it's now time to add, as much as I sometimes badmouth adjectives, and God knows they deserve it, but and of course they're in-laws, the adverbs. But I told you that the future was changed. Not a manifestation of the future, but future was change. But let me clarify and say the future is the place of beneficial change. And of course it's Sister Sacrificial. Beneficial change, not just change. Because change is going on all the time. But the future in the revolutionary sense, and from a more complex position outside the city, change, the future is beneficial change. Thus, what I'd already said several times in the last 2 meetings, if you are not so engaged, that is, in beneficial change, then you have no individual future. It's that simple. But now note, even though I almost said the same thing the last time we were taping, I want to point out that a man can still be in a future life. You can be in a future without having an individual future, because life's got a future, and you're in here. So it's like talking about old questions of flies in an automobile going from here to Topeka. When you get there from Miami to Topeka, has the fly flown 2,600 miles, 2,000 miles? If the fly dies on the way, is that going to affect the people in the car? If you die, is it going to affect life? Is it going to stop life from growing? Is it going to stop life from getting to Topeka if it wanted to get there? You can be in a future without having an individual future. I would refer you want to play Supra and CF, to my ideas, my sketches to you of life having a long and short-term memory the same as man, which shouldn't come as a surprise, and that perhaps the ideas of some life after life, the idea of you stretching into something past the physical line here, might have to do in some strange way with life having a short and long-term memory, and of in some way being able to ingrain yourself into the nervous system of life's long-term memory, longer term at least, as opposed to you drop dead and life forgot you. The same way that you forget my, remember, pizza takeout number once you dial it. By the time you turn around and somebody hollers, well, let's party until it gets here. And if somebody says, what was the number? You just dialed it. What was it? Could you see an individual can drop having no individual future, and you are still part of life's future? But then could you see the possibility of all these reflections, ideas of an afterlife, of paradise and all, but mainly an afterlife, just in general? Could you see that there might be a different situation if you were individually undergoing beneficial change in your lifetime? Not change, because running down, growing old is change. Dying is change. Illness is change. Becoming a bigger chowderhead, if it was possible, than you were born to be, is change. But if you could engage in beneficial change, what if you could have an individual future inside of a greater future? The greater future is already going on. That is, life is going right ahead. Life is expanding, extending itself, getting better, healthier, larger, more intelligent. Inside, all sorts of things are going on the same way that we could say if you were getting bigger, more intelligent, etc., then inside of you there are things dying, as we all know, constantly. Things that no longer have an individual future, never had a chance at an individual future. Microbes, the individual cells themselves. But then what if a human could have an individual future, that you could make individual beneficial change? Would you concede? That's not the way to put it. You got no ability to concede. Could you imagine that life might be pleased, if it ever took note of this, that within the bowels of my own being, figuratively speaking, within my own blood and guts, somebody's trying to help. Like a tiny voice offshore, not the big voice, but like a tiny voice down in the midst of all the rumbles of my stomach, the flashings and the static in my brain, it's like I hear a little voice hollering, "I'm trying to help." Not little voices hollering, "Hey, here's a pack of cigarettes." "Here's a chocolate sundae." You know, what will you give me for that? What do you do if I give those up? Not that. But actually down in there, an individual attempting and succeeding, of course, to some degree, or life could not notice it, an individual future. But now I refer you back in this great merry-go-round that I have constructed here in the last few days. If you are not engaged in becoming more complex, you've got no future. Literally. You're in a future, and no matter how bad you misstep, if that's possible, no matter how lethargic, no matter how useless you are, I've got to tell you, if it makes you feel better at all, I don't know why it should if you're an ordinary person, but if it makes you feel better, I want to tell you what, life will survive you. It will. Do your worst. I don't normally try to even pass out any policy statements from life. I do not act as a kind of Secretary of State for life on that level, but I can tell you this. I'm sure that life will find this agreeable. If not, I'll die here in a second. But I can tell you this, that if you wanted to, if you knew how, if it was possible, and many people in the city, of course, believe this, but if you found this to be feasible, then go ahead and try your worst. Take your worst shot, and I'm going to tell you, life will survive. You can round up all your friends. You can get a family. All right, I'll tell you what, if you got the ability, you can raise up a whole tribe of people, a whole nation, and give it your worst shot. Life will take it. So, how about the other way around? How unexpected would it be? There's another way. I want to verbally point out a little something connected with time again. Now, in the 3D world, back in the city, intelligence would tell you that the future would be that which has not yet happened. Being as clever as I am with words, I believe that about wraps the mother up. The future is just that which has not yet happened. But from another view, could any of you see this? That the future could be that which is already presently a part of something in a more dimensionally complex world. All right, I said it could be. Never mind all that. It is. That shouldn't be a secret even for you just following my verbal descriptions. But time, at the ordinary level, now forget people trying to speculate or writing science fiction or people believing they're talking to gods and the dead. All of that is a very, very, very feeble reflection, useless, it's not going to help life at all. And it foretells no future for those people. But back at the city level, ordinary intelligence would tell you that the future has got to be. I don't know how you could make it any simpler, or I don't know how extending it would improve the definition, the description I just gave. The future in the city is simply that which has not yet happened. But I'm telling you that the future in the 3D world is already a part, it's a piece of something already existing. It is. What is going to be happening in the city tomorrow has already happened. It's not science fiction, and I'm not going to go into any great verbal description of something that would seem to be that far removed from the hardball kind of courts that most of you people have to play in, because looks upon as to what's happened for the first part of tonight's tape. And I'm certainly not going into areas even more exotic. But that is a fact, and it's of some practical value to try and remember it. It has nothing to do with fatalism. It has nothing to do with useless speculation. All that's just hobbies in the city. Well, what appears to be that which has not yet happened in the city, that is, at the 3D level, I assure you has already happened, or it couldn't happen at the 3D level. I'll look at another way if any of you can follow this. If what's going to be the future here has not already happened, then friends and neighbors, this is it. Think about that. If what I've told you that I know, that I see, that I'm simply in touch with, that life is there, that to use ordinary descriptions would be like going around a corner, or be like, it can't be drawn, or you could see it, but it would be like, if here you live, if there's 3D consciousness on that side of a block, right there, and that's all you know, let's assume that even that, the way I drew it, but let's assume that's three-dimensional, that is life for ordinary people. Then what you call the future is right there, going another. Now if that's not true, and that the future is not something that's already in place somewhere else, then that means that this is it. Forget all this other drawing, this is it. Literally, that this is it. And I'm not trying to frighten you because it's not, or you couldn't even hear me. But do you see it would be? This would be it. And so the idea that the future, I repeat one more time now for you people that are just listening, it's not fatalism. There is no ism for it. But the idea is the future here has not yet happened. It's things that have not yet happened. It's fallacious. It's not the opposite. I always try and remember that, even though I don't point it out continuously. It is not the opposite. That's not what I'm saying. That all right, the future is absolutely determined. The future is known. The future's already been set up. I didn't say that. I'm saying you that the future, that which has not yet happened here, is already a piece of something existing in a more complex, dimensionally complex world. All you got to do is look at a 5-dimensional world. A piece of what's going to be happening here is already in place. It's already a part of something else. This has a useful potential. I wouldn't bring it up. And I wouldn't bring it up tonight unless it had some useful potential even connected to what I was talking about, assuming that you can see a connection with what I was talking about. At the 3D level, to talk about the future as being that which has not yet happened, can you see this connection? I'll fling caution to the wind. How about my latest description of the new kind of intelligence, or a different kind of intelligence being able to think without believing? That is on the basis that that which you could see, that which would be correct in a more dimensionally complex world, would not be dependent upon proof. Which, remember, as I was suggesting, was the crux of the three-dimensional definition of belief, the distinguishing factor between belief and real thinking. That is, that you were operating on the basis of, you were relying on, you were convinced of things which had no absolute proof. Anything that had absolute proof here would be meaningless. And that which is wrapped around the corner cannot be proven here. The kind of thinking I'm talking about being able to move information from one place to another, where it is not native, then any idea of proof, there's no word for it, I can just say is irrelevant. That's as strong as you can say it. And it is not the opposite. It is not that that kind of new information is unprovable. It's that the idea of proof, the limits of being able to prove it by three-dimensional means, by three-dimensional thinking, by simplistic thinking, is irrelevant. It cannot contain it. There's nowhere to start. It's dead in the water. That is, it's dead before it leaves the pier. It can go no further. That information cannot be moved for any profit. By God, I did throw it to the wind, didn't I? Am I to take it that you people are suffering from, I never heard this, the pre-holiday blues? The pre-holiday letdown? So that shows you're more complex, dimensionally complex, and I imagine you've got the post-holidays letdown before the holidays are here. Just shows I just underestimate you people. The various and curious ways in which you can suffer that I'd never imagined. That's right. Why wait till the last minute to have the post-holiday blues? Why wait until the last minute to have the post-holiday letdowns? Let's have them. Let's let them down now. I'll go ahead and get depressed. I won't wait until after the holidays. I'll get depressed now for after the holidays. When I say that a certain description of the kind of thinking that I am talking about, all this many, many times, months and years, would be like thinking separated from, not based upon, not tied to belief. But it does not mean that what you think is irrational. It means you're thinking something, that information has been moved from one place to another, and at the place where the information apparently would be native, the people there don't think shit of it. You walk around, you kick. Diamonds are everywhere. They're getting away. We can't even plant corn. There's so many diamonds. You move somewhere else, and they got corn. They got to wait until somebody comes by from out of town and says, "What's that pretty yellow stuff?" And they suddenly quit kicking it around and spitting on it, and they go, "Oh, that's our life. Corn is our life. There's nothing like corn." When I say that thinking of this type that I was calling new intelligence is not connected with belief, it's not that the opposite. It is not that what I could describe or what you think that would be strange in the diamond fields of Africa, if it came from a corn area, from Kansas, and then vice versa. It is not that one of them is the opposite of the other. It is not that one would be rational in one place and irrational in the other. There are no such confines to it. It is not a matter of proving either this or that. It's not a matter, it's not anti-city intellectual. It is not saying that anything that the city today says is provable is a waste of time. Because if you can hear a certain way, the so-called New Agers throughout the ages, all mystics, almost invariably end up somewhere cursing rationale, which is, well, to their profit. But they normally, one way or the other, denounce logic, reason, because they have to call upon information that they don't understand how they came by it. They don't understand how it got replanted in a certain place in their own neural system. And then they say, well, I received voices from the heavens, from you, from Atlantis, from the gods. I found it in a secret book, and as soon as I read it, the book blew up in a flash. And people say, well, that's not reasonable. And they go, aha, well, fuck reason. What I'm telling you is true. That's all they can do. They can go into some, if they got more time, a more reasonable exposition as to why reason won't get you anywhere. So, this is an old song on the surface. What I am pointing out from the revolutionary view position, of course, is not simply against city intelligence. You've got to have it. We'd all be in a hell of a shape. People in the city should be encouraged in all, as they call it, intellectual and logical pursuits. If they ever ask, are you in favor of it? You holler, hell yes. You encourage them. You promise that, of course you don't have to, but promise that you just don't have any change, but you'll contribute to the school fund to raise up more thinkers. In the city, you should always encourage it. But when I say that this kind of new intelligence is not based upon proof, it does not mean that this is the opposite. It does not mean that it's the other side of that. The opposite is never any more true than its predecessor. That's not the case. It's that which is correct. For a while, I guess some of you noted, I was trying to draw a little distinction of no great lasting value between the truth, and I was having Kairoot do some of it, between that and the city that people call true, and then I was saying that there is something else, the correct. The truth changes. People don't notice it. And what's true can be false. What's true today can be false tomorrow. What's true in you in one location can be false in another location, and your consciousness, your awareness does not move in time, and so you're not aware that you hold two conflicting opinions. You're not supposed to say it. It doesn't matter. But the price and the value cancel each other out. You can't move your opinion that's yes here to where it's no. It simply cancels each other out. There is no economic gain. There is no profit made in the transaction going either way if you could do it, which you can't, which people do not do. All of this was to try to get you to see again, that for me to say that real thought, real intelligence, real thinking has nothing to do with belief, that is proof. Because that which other people call intelligence, that which you call intelligence, can't prove anything. This has nothing to do with proof. It has nothing to do with that which is true. I guess I pushed it again about as far as anybody's going to follow it tonight. But my description of thinking without believing, I repeat to finish this for tonight, does not infer that what you know can't be proven. It's just irrelevant. Of course, it can't be proven. But you've got to see that at the ordinary level, nothing can be proven. Just people says it can. And they says that some instances things are proven, in other instances they're not. That's why the dictionary has knowledge under K's, most dictionaries do. And it has belief under that other funny looking letter. And they seem to be two different things. That belief says that you rely on something for which there is no absolute proof. And the city intelligence, your intelligence at that level goes, aha, well I know the difference in that. That's not having enough proof. So when I really want to believe something, or when I really want to think something, I think I will think on stuff that has absolute proof. At least as close as possible. It's just a city dream. It's just a hobby. Because if you had all the proof, if you could square the corners of the 3D world, you could prove everything in there, what would you have? You'd have what humanity now has. That'd be their level of intelligence. And they would still have a whole bundle, not of dirty clothes, no, but a whole bundle of what they seem to want to call unanswerable questions. If all of that was proven, and they could take from the city view all non-provable items, that is, all stuff that people believe, and they in some way could hold a plebiscite and they all vote, and the majority was actually the most intelligent, showed the most intelligence, and they took out all beliefs, all stuff that could not be proven, and just dismissed all that and only stayed with that which they had absolute proof for. They all agreed on it, or most of them did. And they say, okay, that's it. We have now explained the universe, right? And they all say yes. And it's all right, this part of the meeting is closed. Now, where are we? Then those same ones, that is everybody, and especially those that voted in the majority, would go, you know what? I don't feel a bit better. The truth is, we don't know a damn bit more than we did. That's why I'm trying to get you to see the kind of thinking here that, well, I guess we might as well use, not me as an example, but the kind of stuff I talk about. Can any of this be proven? In a sense, yeah, but we're not going to use that term. I never use it. I make light of it oftentimes, apparently, make jokes about how crazy this is. But can any of this be proven by any means known? And we can say, well, certainly not, because some of this is so far removed from what people ordinarily believe. But you've got to see what people ordinarily believe can't be proven either. You got to start there. It's not since that's true, then this is okay. That's not it. But you first got to see that which people take as being, all right, let's talk about real reality before we get into these weird areas like you talking about revolutionary views and all that shit. Look at reality. Look at good, mundane, everyday affairs, the bricklayers and your mother, your father, that everybody believes in. First see that none of that can be proven. They're not talking about knowledge. It's all belief. There is no such thing as absolute proof in the city. I know they say there are. There is. They can say all they want to. They can say that disco's dead. But some of us, they can say all kinds of things in the city that we know are not true. Say James Brown's going to do a good 2 years out of that 6-year sentence. We know that nature is not going to let that happen. This is not the anathema of logic, of proof, of reason. It's not the opposite. It'd be the other side of this. It'd be over here in the back. This goes around at another angle. It takes into consideration that which has already happened. It takes knowledge of it and that which apparently has yet to happen here. It has nothing to do with proving either this or that. Never has and doesn't now. Because this or that here in the city is always flawed, always lacking, and it can't be proven. And if it could be proven, the very thing I said couldn't be if they got together and voted. If it could be, do you understand that you would have killed a patient while examining it? If it could be proven, if everything in the city could be proven, you would have cut off its connection to all other dimensions, and it would have been like you trying to, that you had this person and you were playing doctor, or you were trying to learn, and you cut up the bastard until finally he died, but maybe at that second when his final breath went out, you went, I'm beginning to understand what's going on. And then it'd be like, well, darn. And I was getting real close to understanding the nature of a human life, and the son of a gun died on me. Literally, you would have cut this out if it was possible. If you could prove this or that. It doesn't matter this or that in the city is the same thing. If you could prove the three-dimensional side, where man lives sensually, if you could prove it, you would have cut it out of the living part of life. It would die right before your very eyes. You would have committed suicide for all of us if you could do that. Well, I guess I'll leave it by just trying to, maybe I already have to some of you, see that what I'm talking about is not the opposite. It's not non-belief. It's not that what you know is sans proof. It's the proof. You want me to holler, it's fucking irrelevant? It's just irrelevant. What else can I do? It's irrelevant. If proof had anything to do with this, I'd prove it. All right. Just for that, we'll have an epilogue. Back to me, yeah? I just wanted to say that although I guess I certainly do not appear to be religious in any known sense, I do want to go ahead and encourage everybody that is involved with this. It's up to you. But I encourage you, you should constantly, you should at least daily speak to life, in a sense. You should thank life, because people involved with this, no matter how I talk about it, if you belong here, you know what I'm going to say. If nothing else, you should tell life, or you should express your thanks that you have been singularly, uniquely treated nicely. Life didn't have to do this for any of us. I'm not saying you now, I'm saying us. That life has been uniquely, there's something more than one person can experience something unique. But as opposed to everybody else, the rich, the famous, the tall, the short, the fat, the well-known, life has, you should express a kind of revolutionary thankfulness that life has been real good to you if you belong in this. It's just been real good. And there's nothing you can say. Except you could every now and then, you can say thanks. can if you want to. That was my suggestion for the year. Bye.